Welcome back to vlog number 3, and this week I'm with these guys, the slugs and the snails in my garden. The gastropods, to be more precise. Slugs and snails are a familiar sight in our gardens, thriving in damp corners and munching on the greenery. Their slow movement and inconspicuous behaviour may fool you into thinking that these are dull creatures. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Take a walk around your garden after dark and you will find that these are truly fascinating creatures. I've just been out filming some footage to go with the main vlog. Mum and I were out here. We've come across a pair of slugs in a courtship ritual, which is one of the most disgusting but fascinating things I've ever seen. They look like aliens and they're wagging their tail. It almost looks like the way that a newt kind of flutters its tail when it's trying to court a female. And they're just sort of going back and forth, round in circles, in this courtship ritual. When time-lapsed, the movements of the slugs are much clearer, drawing closer and closer to each other. They move clockwise, as their right side of the body is where the genital paw is. This circling can continue for hours, with the slugs stroking each other with the sarcobellum, a mobile penile structure which protrudes from their mantle. Here you can also see the pneumostome, the respiratory port that leads to a single lung, enabling pulmonary gastropods to breathe. As slugs are evolved from snails, and they are alike morphologically, this process is similar in both organisms. Slugs and snails have one pair of eye stalks with light-sensitive eye spots at the end, and one pair of lower tentacles with which it senses its physical environment. These tentacles are actually retractable through a pretty interesting mechanism. I'm going to try and make some slug and snail eye stalks out of this glove. I'm going to draw some eyes on them first. 2 eyes. In a slug or a snail, these would retract inwards, so they would go down inside themselves. A slug whose eyes are in. The mechanism by which this works is slugs and snails don't have blood vessels like we do, so the blood that they have is called a hemolymph, and it's actually within them they have an open circulatory system, and they can push fluid into their eye stalks to make them stand up, and then when they want them to come back in, they retract them back inside by relieving the pressure. Next time you see a snail, take a closer look. Those eye stalks are super interesting. With gastropods being so active at night, I wanted to find out if they would return to a particular spot to shelter away during the day. So today we're going to do an experiment. Now, one of my lecturers at university did an experiment about 10 years ago looking at homing of garden snails to see whether they could find their way back to where they sheltered during the day. I'm going to do a similar experiment to find out the same thing. This is a map of my front garden with some of the features such as the trees and the pond, and these black lines show where the garden patches are. And what I'm going to do right now is go around and find some snails in the garden. I'm going to mark them with a number, and then I'm going to come back tomorrow morning and see if they've made it back to where I found them today. So fingers crossed we find something. When looking for snails during the day, damp spots like under leaves close to the ground are a good place to start. I managed to find and mark 5 snails. All I had to do was wait until the next morning to see if they had returned. So I marked the snails yesterday, and I'm coming to check to see if they have come back. So last night I came out and they weren't where they were when I marked them. So let's see. Oh, number 5's back. And another one is back. We've also got number 3. So that's 3 out of 5. I can't believe this experiment has actually worked. I'm not going to look for the others because that's so dense. And I'm going to extrapolate my results and say that they're probably in there. So now I know that snails can find their way home. I've got one last question. So I'm going to conduct a short experiment to see how quickly this snail can move. If you want to see exactly how a snail moves on that 1 foot, put them on a piece of glass like a window and have a look on the other side and you'll see something pretty mega. The foot of the snail appears to ripple as muscular contractions, helped by slime, pull the snail along. Sped up, this looks like a pretty funky way of getting around. So we've got the snail. This is going to be done in the most unscientific way. It'll be very arbitrary, but nonetheless. So I'm marking where the head is. We have the clock. Go. I think this is going to take a long time. And there we go. 7 minutes, 23.81. Okay, that's a long time to travel 4 body lengths. Using the timing and body length, I've worked out that this snail moves at a whopping 0.07 centimetres per second. To put that into perspective, travelling at that speed, it would take 697.67 days to complete a marathon. That's almost 2 years. Luckily for the snails, they're more than happy staying close to home. Now everybody knows that slugs and snails are the enemy of the gardener, but there are ways that you can avoid coming into conflict with the gastropods in your garden. And the lovely green-fingered George has sent me a video explaining how you can.
Hello, I'm wildlife gardener George. Now Amy has asked me to talk about slugs and snails. Now they are a gardener's nuisance, but I've never harmed one with pesticides or chemicals or anything like that. Now what me and my dad do is on most evenings we go on slug watch. One way to dispose of slugs and snails is by picking them out on a damp day and putting them in your compost heap, or alternatively in a wild area. Another great way to keep control of slugs and snails is to have one of these fellas.
That's absolutely right. Frogs, toads and hedgehogs all love to snack on slugs and snails, keeping numbers down. Next time we have a downpour after dark, I must recommend popping on a raincoat and exploring your garden. Using George's solid advice, you will also be able to carry out some friendly pest control whilst taking a closer look at these weird garden dwellers.